Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of Silph Thyme, your Pokemon Go PvP podcast. I'm Zacharias, and I'm here as always with our host, Thidricker.
Gothentine Herrslinger.
Today, we are talking about Architect Cup, the July 2022 meta for Silph. And this month isn't just the monthly cup meta, but it's our regionals competition meta.
A lot on the line for this one.
Oh yeah. This is the big one. Those trainers who are lucky enough to earn an invitation to regionals get to compete for a place in Continentals, and I think that's where both of our hearts are set now.
For sure.
Regionals are going to be going on all across the world now, all through July, and you never know. You never know who among you are going out there, what you're going to have to run. So today we're going to be running quickly through what we think the Architect Cup will bring and what we think you should and shouldn't bring.
Yeah, and this is an interesting cup in that it's the most restricted cup they have ever given us ever. There are 40 allowed Pokemon plus Shadow variants, so 61 total if we are counting Shadow separately. And there's no typings, there's no restrictions. It's just here is a list of 40 Pokemon that you can pick from. And then it's really not 61 because some of the Pokemon are just so awful, they're completely unplayable. I'm looking at you, Shadow Bonnet, and Typhlosion, right? They're just never going to see play. They beat like 3 Pokemon, and if you're bringing one of your 6 to beat only 3, you're not going to have a good time. So I would say honestly somewhere between 5 to 10 of the 40 are probably unplayable as the meta develops. Is that the feel you're getting?
Yeah. I think realistically there's just no way to make some of them worthwhile. Like you can pick them, but it's hamstringing yourself. It's like fielding a Pidgey to just have fielded the Pidgey, while it's fun and all, it's not going to help you win the matches.
Yeah, so since there's no typing, we're kind of breaking it down. Flyers are looking strong early on because there are 2 electric moves in the entirety of the cup, which means having some sort of flying coverage is going to be one of the key points. And normals are everywhere, so most of the ghosts are unplayable. And then, of course, as always, in a cup where it's not quote unquote rock, paper, scissors, because it's a whole bunch of neutral matchups, bulk is king. There's not a lot of bulk in this cup. So learning to play around it and build around it is going to be what we're going to focus on. So you can see here, these are the 40 allowed Pokemon. Shadow and regular are both agreeable. And I think we can just, I'll let you jump us through this list of which mons do you think have no play whatsoever?
So being maybe harsh, I kind of feel like Gengar and Haunter just aren't going to see play. Like you say, ghosts are just too risky.
Yeah.
I think then following on from that, like you say, Banette just out the door.
Yeah, he's even worse than Gengar and Haunter.
I think Dusclops and Alon Marowak, maybe, Dusclops has a little bit of bulk and has access to some coverage moves. So that makes it maybe a little bit of a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah. But he doesn't have any finishing moves as well. Like I'm agreeing with you. He's got some bulk, so maybe he's got some play because he's got coverage. But his only finishing move is return if you've got it.
Yeah,
and that's rough.
And kind of the same story with Alon Marowak. I mean, it has lots of finishing moves, and it is that Swiss Army knife. There's a large move set to draw on if you want to fire, if you want the hex. But at the same time, I just don't see ghosts in this meta. And
it's a meta of normals and water types. So you're saying a ghost fire is a bad choice?
Kelsey Breeze. I mean, I'm not really seeing what the problem is. Yeah, so I think really when you break it down, you end up chucking the ghosts.
Yeah.
And then you end up running through and you say, okay, what else isn't going to be useful? I can't see really Glalie playing. I just, the better sister is there in Frostlass. That's the one ghost.
Frostlass is the one ghost that definitely will see play and is strong enough to be worth seeing play. I think we'll see Trevenant because people like the bulk, and if you get it lined up well enough, grass moves are very good in this. I
For
think
sure.
Trevenant's a lot riskier though because of the ice everywhere.
Definitely. I think with Lapras sitting there, okay, you can hit it back with seed bombs and it's not going to want to tank it's not going to want to tank two shadow balls, but it can tank the one, and you're going to get beat down, especially if it's running ice beam. If it's running, any ice moves are going to cut through Trevenant.
Yep.
And I don't see it. So that means pretty much every ghost is out the window. You could then say there's the dark types, so mostly poison darks, but you've got a couple of non-poisons.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're almost as safe as you can get, the dark types, because there aren't, like, other than Beware, Sudowoodo, and Donphan. But I mean,
there are two fast move fighters, which is Sudowoodo and Donphan. Just don't play Donphan.
yeah,
I want Donphan to work. I try and make him work every time he's eligible. Don't run Donphan.
yeah.
Sudowoodo at least is a rock type. If you get a good matchup where they're leaning on flyers, Sudowoodo's in a good spot. But I think he's more fringe use than mainline.
Definitely, because he's still going to lose to the ice waters most of the time.
Yeah.
There's the water damage coming in, and I think, unfortunately, Licky and Jumpluff, even though they are really bulky, I just don't see them outperforming the other bulk.
No, I think Licky is the worst licker because its secondary move is Shadow Ball, and it doesn't need that because it's worthless against normal types. Whereas Beware, you're running Stomp Superpower, which makes it's not a licker, but it's the same kind of thing. Munchlax is just better in every way because it's still got Body Slam and it's got Bulldoze to deal with those poisons. And Snorlax has Superpower and Body Slam, which makes him better. And he's got a Shadow variant, which makes him better.
Yeah.
So I don't see Licky seeing any play either. Jumpluff is just, oh man, Ice dissolves it. And Poison also beats it. And it's got no fast move damage. So I don't see Jumpluff having a good day.
Yeah. So already we've cut out, a fair chunk of what's there. And then really the fires, like you mentioned, Typhlosion and then Charizard, the fire, but I think it's just, again, too risky in this meta. And then again, weak to the water ice. You've got Don and Sandslash. They're both fairly risky choices. Maybe could have some play because there's so many poisons.
But they don't have the bulk. Even in their winning matchups, they limp away. So your opponent's going to get farm off of them. That's the real struggle of, Donphan's got great moves. He's got Earthquake. He's got, you can run Charm or Counter or Mud Slap. He's got Body Slam, is it? He's got Body Slam. He's got great moves, but he's just so frail. He's low defense, low HP. And so even when he wins, he's not winning convincingly. So you're not bringing much into the next round with him, and your opponent can probably just farm him down.
Yeah. So then there's the poisons. And I think realistically, with the options that are there, I just don't see Ariados and Scolipede really making it into the final picks. And Galarian Slowbro, I mean, it has confusion, but it's still not the best choice.
Yeah. The only way Galarian Slowbro will work, and I've been trying to make him work, is if the meta shifts to focus on your Beedrill and your Venomoth. Because I think Beware he beats Beware, which is great in an even energy. And so if people start leaning into Beedrills and Venomoth, which are the two good bugs, Galarian Slowbro has some play, but it's not great play because all of his moves are pretty expensive. If you do try and run him, you have to run Confusion, not Poison Jab. And then you want to run Psychic Sludge Bomb because Focus Blast is too slow for you to get to. He doesn't have Hypno Bulk to let you get up to a Focus Blast. So you're running Psychic Sludge Bomb on him, and you may get a shield, but he's really just there for confusion. Whereas Venomoth, our other confusion user, you've got Poison Fang. So you're going to be just always dropping defense as a parting shot or when you've got to dip out. So it's just a much better confusion user as a general rule of thumb.
And like that, pretty much now we've cut out what, a quarter of our meta straight away. I think the mons you're left with, they're all going to see play, and a fair few of even the ones we've mentioned are going to see play, but they're just not advisable. And I think, there's, for such a narrow group, for 30 mons or just under, there's still good teams you can make. There's still stuff to do.
Yeah, so let's look at what's left now that we've removed the chaff. And did we talk about how awful Typhlosion is? It loses everything. Don't run Typhlosion. Just don't. In case we didn't mention it. So let's talk about what's left.
So kind of looking and saying like, okay, well, what are the general titles you want to have? So we mentioned it before, the bulk. So bulk is going to be a really important, almost always is, but it's going to be a really important thing here. And it is a rare enough commodity. So really we've got the Snorlax family with Licky Licky as an honorable. We've got Lapras, or its kind of lesser cousin Celio in terms of bulk. We've got Jumpluff, and we've got Dusclops. I think really Jumpluff is just too risky. So, but being open to the ice, it means that it's not really bulky. So that's gone. Snorlax, Munchlax, Lapras, Celio, and to some extent Dusclops. That's your bulk. That's the whole meta worth.
And Celio is really good because since there aren't a lot of ghosts, you can just run. I mean, it runs Body Slam 99% of the time. Aurora Beam helps it in case a ghost shows up. Otherwise, you can run Return if you think that people aren't going to shield him. Lapras, everyone knows and loves. It's Surf plus usually Skull Bash. It's got a lot of bulk. It always chips in. Snorlax, you can choose Shadow or Normal. Both are great options. Lick, if it gets lined up against a non-normal type, just does cumulative damage. And Stab Body Slam is a great move. So you choose Snorlax over Munchlax to deal with the other normals because Superpower is a great move. If it lands, you're going to blow up any of the other normal types. Munchlax you're dealing with if you are worried about the normal safe swaps, which are mostly poisons, because Bulldoze is fantastic. If it lands on the poisons, they're dead. Except for Golbat. But so those are all good bulk options. You probably want to run 2 of them just so you've got some safety. The next category are the generalists. Now there's 3 proper generalist safe swaps. Melodic and Gyarados are the first 2 because nothing resists Dragon in this entire cup. So Dragon Breath, Dragon Tail, they will always do neutral damage. They're good damaging moves, so you can actually lean on them and pressure the enemy to empty their energy because they're not going to be able to farm you down without taking a lot. In the Sims, depending on how you want to play it, Gyarados is better with shields. Melodic does better shields down. Melodic has a little more bulk, but Gyarados has more fast or more charge move pressure. And so it's just both of them work well. I think Gyarados is probably a little bit stronger, and it's also got the shadow form, which gives it a little more diversity. But I think both of them are very, very playable. And then the third one is Malamar, that kind of weird psychic dark type with no psychic moves other than fast move. But it doesn't really meet a lot of resistance that it's got to worry about in the cup. And it's very fast because of Psycho Cut to get to charge moves. So it's another one of those with an energy lead. It can run away with a lot of it. And it just kind of never does terribly in the cup as the meta develops. So like, because people aren't running too many bugs, it really just needs to watch out for Beedrill, and then Drapion can be really bad if the Drapion has an energy lead on it. And I think Alolan Muck is its other bad matchup because it resists everything it throws. But otherwise, it just kind of feels okay the whole time.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones that's becoming more and more favorited. You're seeing it pop up in cups a lot more often.
It's just if it gets an energy lead, you can 2 shield it, and it'll have so much health when the next mon comes in. It's still going to be a threat to him.
Yeah.
So like one of the things you're going to want to kind of keep an eye out for as you play this cup is winning lines. Mons that generate enough energy well that when a fresh mon comes in, you can knock them down too. So sometimes it's worth over investing in them. And Malamar is one of those that can definitely do it because it's got enough bulk to stay in while you're shielding it most of the time.
Yeah. And then really that plays into the idea of a spammy set as well. So if you want to shield pressure on the back of that, or if you just want to facilitate Malamar getting something shields down, you can have something like Credilli that's, pretty much entirely going to be charge move pressure because Bullet Seed's not going to be really killing much in the cup. You have things like Pelipper, which does have a decent amount of fast move pressure, especially against the Polyrath or the grass types, but it's mainly going to be there to whip out those weather balls and have the Hurricane to back it up if it needs to. And things like Quillfish, definitely a favorite that just get to fast move or get to charge moves so quickly with that Poison Sting. Equally then Drapion as well. And the Shadow form, of course. And Frostlass, of course, the very frequent queen of that extra sneak, your favorite, just to really hassle you with those constant avalanches and shadow balls. Frostlass is going to really spam, and then Polyrath as well. And depending what you run on it, you can just mash out the damage. And Shadow Polyrath, it's between the moves that it has, I don't think it's going to struggle to see play.
Yeah, Polyrath is really strong if you can get an energy lead on him. And then again, you can run him with Ice Punch and Dynamic Punch or Dynamic Punch and Scald, because Scald has a debuff chance and also just does good stab damage with them if you run into a ghost, right? So if Frostlass pops out, Frostlass does not want to eat a Scald. So good, some great stuff there. Some spammy mons. You need something to pressure shields, or you're going to get down. And then we've got coverage. These are our dark poisons: your Muck, your Alolan Muck, and your Skuntank. We didn't put Drapion in this group, even though it also has coverage, because Drapion's a little bit frailer, but it's a lot more aggressive with an energy lead and getting those crunches out. Muck, you're going to see everywhere because it's got Thunder Punch. It's bulky enough, and it's got one of 2 electric moves in the entire cup, the other one being Thunder on Linoon. And so it's got the only fast Thunder move to use as well, and it's got Dark Pulse, so if ghosts come out, it works well. And Poison Jab is good enough energy generation. So you're just going to see plenty of Mucks, I think, just because it's kind of a go-to safe swap in this meta. Confusion users heard it, but again, there are 2 confusion users, so you can kind of play around that. If they don't give a spot to a confusion user, Muck looks even better. Yeah,
for sure. And then there's the Shadow variant as well. So Poison Jabs add up so quick.
Yeah. And then Alolan Muck is our good old friend who is only weak to ground. I think Snarl is the better variant in this one, just because throwing charge moves quickly gives him a lot of wins. You can run him Poison Jab, Acid Spray, Dark Pulse, but I think after one match, they will have figured out your Acid Spray plan, and it will be less successful, which is why I think the Snarl Alolan Muck is probably the better of our 2 safe coverages. He does pretty well, honestly, because he doesn't have any real hard losses unless you're running Mudslap Donphan for some bizarre reason, or something that super outpaces it, like Shadow Gyarados with a shield. Will just blow him out of the water. But generally speaking, since no one's running Sandslash or Donphan, Alolan Muck is going to be a pretty safe drop-in.
It is ranking badly, but I can see it making a good showing of itself.
Yeah. And then finally, we've got Skuntank, which is probably the worst option of the 3. just because flamethrower is its usual coverage move, and there's just not enough grass to really need flamethrower. I mean, it's neutral for the ice waters. It's very good against Frostlass, but you've already got Crunch, so you don't really need something that's good against Frostlass.
Yeah.
But it's there.
It's not safe.
If you want to go wild with it, you can run Shadow variant. You can go even further and run it with Shadow Bite, since there aren't many fire types to resist it, and Shadow Bite will just put in damage, a significant amount. It shouldn't win as many as it does, but it actually can significantly pick up some crazy wins with Bite. And especially if you get the Crunch debuff, like it'll just kind of breeze through, chomping away. So something spicy to consider with Skuntank, but I think safety wise, Alolan Muck and regular Muck are your options.
Yeah.
So those are probably the top picks of them. You can also get some more kind of generalists. I like Lanoon. I've used it in previous cups. It's a normal with Shadow Claw, so it keeps the Ghost of Bay, and it's got Grass Knot Thunder, so it'll deal with waters and it will deal with flying. The problem is it's not super bulky, so you've got to be careful with it, and Thunder is very expensive. So to deal with the flyers, you've got to bait out a shield with Grass Knot or get them not to shield the Thunder. So it's always kind of a gamble with Lanoon. Doesn't mean it's not playable, just means it's a little bit riskier with the line. But I do like Lanoon, so I wouldn't rule it out. You can also put Dig on it. Again, if the cup you think Poison is the way to go, throw Dig on it. No one expects Dig. They're like, oh, I can take a Thunder, and then they dissolve. But again, Dig's super expensive, so it requires either shields down or them not to shield it.
Yeah.
And then I was just going to say the other generalist who I think is going to keep seeing more play is normal cast form. I mean, I know you love normal cast form, so I'll let you chat about him.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely one. Thinking about needing coverage for the flyers and also then having some coverage for the ices. There aren't that many rock moves going around. Having that Weather Ball rock is a nice little kind of niche for cast form, and it's not going to overperform in terms of beating the other normals. It has a problem with wanting to not be hit with those superpowers or the counter users, but at the same time it's really only weak to them, and there's not really else. Like there's okay, so you're not going to want to face up against Snorlax, but that's one mon. You're not going to want to face up against Donphan's not coming out. It can beat Beware, and it doesn't have the worst time against Sudowoodo, so it has the possibility, and it has access to Energy Ball as well. So if you get an energy lead, you could probably nearly a one shot against Sudowoodo.
Yeah,
and it also then has the coverage for the flyers, the ices, and the waters. So I think it has a really good niche. It's ranking poorly enough. I mean, for a meta out of, you say 30 mons, it's in the lower 2/3, but at the same time, it's such a narrow meta that what is spice?
Yeah. And if you really want to throw your opponents for a loop, you can run Weather Ball Rock and Weather Ball Normal. You're going to lose the water matchups that Energy Ball got you, but you win the normal matchups. So you can flip Snorlax in a crazy way, because they'll be like, oh yeah, it's just a Weather Ball. And then boom, you hit them with Stab Normal, and it ruins their day.
That's a good call. I like that. Yeah.
So again, you kind of only get to pull it off once, but it can make a difference. So and again, with such a narrow meta, move is the most spice we can give you. So that's normal cast form. We've got what other spice, quote unquote, are you seeing, or lesser picks?
Shiftry is a personal favorite of mine. I run Shadow Shiftry in Open Great League all the time, and it always outperforms my expectations. I don't know how I get that extra move or how I get lucky and they don't shield Leaf Blade and get nearly one shot, or I get to farm up against something that I really shouldn't, like an Azu getting farmed down with Snarl. It shouldn't happen, but it does, and you're happy days because you have 3 foul plays pretty much banked for whatever comes in. And with that shadow damage, it just really can dish out the damage, and it can take one move. You can let yourself tank one move, and you're probably going to get to 2 in return. So you're going to be able to get the shield pressure out there. You're going to outpace things, basically. Even, not that Skarmory is in this cup, but you can dish out damage against Skarmory. So it's nice to have a mon like that. There isn't really anything that resists both. There's Alolan Muck, so you really want to face up against it. It's more or less an even matchup until it gets the Sludge Bomb off. Or if it's running Poison Jab, it'll just eat straight through. So it's not going to want to face the poisons or the bugs. It really does not want to see bug damage. But there isn't, like you were saying earlier, that many of them to worry about. So Shadow Shiftry, I think, has some decent play. I don't see it being super meta, but that's a good. It means that people won't be expecting it and won't know exactly what they're doing against it. So
then finally, based on ranking, Venomoth is spicy, but I see it on like 50% of all of the practice teams, because the meta is kind of coming down to Muck because it's got electric coverage, and Beware because it's got no bad matchups. Even in its losing matchups, Stomp, Shadow Claw is just good against Psychics. So because of that, people are looking for confusion users, and there are 2 of them. There is Venomoth, and there is Galarian Slowbro. And as I mentioned, Galarian Slowbro is going to blow your minds. Slow. Not what you want. Whereas Venomoth has Poison Fang. So just Poison Fang Confusion will do almost all of your work. It's got Bug Buzz if you need it. And I think someone's going to try and trip people up and run Infestation Venomoth, which again, I ran back in the Obsidian Cup. I'm a fan of Infestation Venomoth. It's super quick to Bug Buzz, and it's super quick to Poison Fang. So it's definitely viable, interesting, good play, but it's not going to do that thing you want it to do, which is Confusion. So just something to consider with those. But yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the entire meta. So key points to note, which we've kind of touched over. There are 2 confusion users in the entire cup: Venomoth, Galar, Slowbro. There are only 2 electric moves in the entire cup: Thunder Punch on Muck and Thunder on Lanoon. There are only 2 counter users in the cup: Sudowoodo and Donphan. And there are only 2 mons with Dragon Fast moves: Melodic and Gyarados. So those are your rarest assets, all of which are very valuable to look at. Now, unfortunately, your counter users, I mean, Sudowoodo I think is playable. Donphan is not. Sudowoodo is a risk because of all of the water types, but it's better than Donphan by a stretch. So these are kind of the rarities. Now tell us about, what are we seeing so far in our early practice cups?
Yes, so based on looking at 270 Pokemon chosen in different cups, so looking at the teams and then dividing in the number of teams they're played in, you can work out the percentage usage. So unfortunately, Beware and Drapignon are featuring on over 50% of the teams.
Yep.
So it's just, you're going to see them everywhere. Now, that's at the start. So the meta always settles down into something that isn't necessarily the practice meta. So it could end up being wider than this. It could end up being, these don't get used at all. But like you said, Beware doesn't really have bad matchups. So it's probably going to see play. After that, then you've got Gyarados, Frostlass, and Pelipper all coming in over 40%. And Credilli, Muck, Beedrill, and Poliwrath all coming in over 30%. Celio, Lapras, Munchlax, Malamar, Golbat, Milotic, all above 15. And it just works its way down then. Sudowoodo, Snorlax, Alolan Muck, Venomoth, Trevenant, Alolan Marowak, Skuntank, Licky Licky, you get down into the mons that you're not really going to see lots of.
Yeah. And even if you
And
do, they're not that dangerous. So
yeah,
it's like you don't have to have a game plan for when Scolipede shows up. It's a bug. It's going to try and land Mega Horn, and
yeah.
that's all it does. So
And that's the thing. Like, you might need to have a game plan for Trevenant if it comes in. You might need to have a normal type on your team. You might not. You might get away with just having Lapras, and most teams are going to have a normal type with a Shadow Claw or a Lick damage. The Trevenant's not going to be happy. And, there is the possibility that you're going to see stuff like Charizard, Jumpluff come out. Charizard can have Dragon Breath. You could have the completely, off the wall move sets coming in. You could have Jumpluff with both charge move being flying just to throw you off. And it is bulky, and as long as it doesn't get lined up against the ice types, it's going to put in some work. But most of the time, I think realistically, there's 20 Pokemon there that you're going to see.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the basic breakdown. So now we thought we would talk about some IV breakdowns. And with such a narrow meta, this is the kind of stuff that's actually going to end up mattering, what IVs flip what things. So let's just jump into talking about probably what I think are two of the most important IV discussions to have. We're going to look at Venomoth, and then we'll look at Gyarados.
Yeah, Venomoth going in first. Really looking at the difference between Shadow and normal Venomoth. And then you've got, like you said before, your two choices in fast move, really, because Bug Bite just not going to be a choice. Confusion or Infestation. And then it's Poison Fang, Bug Buzz. So it's easy enough to work through what we're going to want. It's either Shadow or normal, Infestation or Confusion. So I don't really see the point in Shadow with Infestation, because with Shadows you really want, okay, fine, Shadow Shiftry is not getting its damage from Snarl, but Poison Fangs aren't going to be dishing out the damage in Shadow form either. It's all about the Bug Buzz, and it deals so much damage. The Shadow doesn't make a huge difference. So looking at Shadow with Confusion and regular with Confusion, the wins with Shadow Confusion in the Sims are higher. You're getting a 41% win rate versus a 31% win rate with the default IVs. So let's just start with that. So if you're going with a Confusion using Venomoth, you could just go straight to the Shadow. It's obviously going to limp away from all those battles, but it's also going to mash out that Confusion damage. So if you're swapping it in, that one Confusion could really chunk a dish out of that muck. Or if they swap in a muck, you could be dishing in so much damage before it can get to a Thunder Punch. I mean, I didn't sim that, but so don't quote me on it. But you're going to get in there pretty quick.
It's and 6 poison jabs to a Thunder Punch.
Okay,
so you're used. Yeah, well, it showed up in every practice cup, so I had to know exactly when to swap out my water type. So
and your confusions, or you're not going to get enough confusion damage in the 6 poison jabs, so it's going to be close. But the reality of it is the Shadow Venomoth with Confusion might be the game plan there. And if you say that that's the choice, your choice then is Shadow Venomoth with Confusion or regular Venomoth with Infestation, in my mind. The Infestation, really you want good IVs to make it worthwhile, to make it compete with the Confusion Venomoth. You're going to need to bait to get that Bug Buzz, to get a lot of the wins it gets, which is always risky. But let's just say you're going with your default IVs. So this is the PV Poke IV simulator. And when you work it through, you have, like I said before, the 41% win rate with a Shadow Venomoth with default IVs. If you make that a rank 1, we don't all have a rank 1, but if you start pushing towards that, the good IVs, the high bulk, you can bring that up to a 45% win rate. So that is saying that 28 out of the 61 Pokemon are wins and 2 are draws. So you're really getting a very good chunk of the meta. You're getting 50-50 basically, and between the draws and the wins. If you go for the infestation, it's not as good. You're looking at 37% or 38% win, even with the rank 1, but you're swapping what you're winning and what you're losing. So it's really about what you want to win. So the confusion, understandably, is going to kill all of those poisons dead. So you're looking at the Gengar Haunter, the Ariados, the Beedrill. You're just going to hammer them. Then if you wanted to have wins over stuff like Credilli, Donphan, Malamar, Sandslash, you're going to want to move into that infestation. And you can still beat the Beedrill, but it's IV dependent. You can beat Cast Form, it's IV dependent. You can beat Linoon, Poliwrath, Trevenant with the infestation and Snorlax, but it's IV dependent. So if they have the right IVs to get one up on you to flip that, you're not going to be able to make it. It sort of depends on each matchup. But again, it's really down to getting that bug buzz. So living long enough to get that bug buzz off and finish out the matchup. And with confusion, you can beat stuff like Golbat, which you're just not going to beat with infestation. You can beat Lapras. You can still beat Snorlax and Trevenant with confusion, but it's IV dependent again. So you're living long enough to get that last Poison Fang off. And you're going to beat stuff like Poliwrath, which is it is the only, well, no, it's not the only fighter because Beware is a fighter as well, but it's using more classic fighter model without the superpower.
Yeah.
You're going to beat the Poliwrath very hard with the confusion. And you're going to beat Typhlosion. And I mean, everybody wants to beat Typhlosion. So, that's
the real risk of the cup.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's kind of hard. It's saying basically, do you want to beat the poisons or do you want to beat the darks? So if you want to beat the darks, you want infestation because it's just going to do super effective on us, and you're going to get those bug buzzes. And if you want to beat the poisons, you're going to really want the confusion damage.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff, and it's an important one because they won't know going into game 1 what your Venomoth is running. So they're going to have to play a lot more careful in game 1, and then they're going to have to adjust, and then you can counter adjust games 2 and 3. And then so our other piece is Gyarados. Both we have Shadow and Normals here as well. Generally speaking, the Shadow is a little bit better. They do have some unique wins back and forth. Interestingly, though, when it comes to regular Gyarados, you don't want the ideal IVs. The 0 attack stat actually costs it some really important wins. Namely, it loses to Quillfish, Celio, and it also loses to, it loses the mirror. Right, so all of those having the rank 1 Gyarados, the only wins you pick up for having perfect rank Gyarados, meaning 0 attack, is Gengar, which I don't think anyone's going to be running, so that's not valuable. But you do just squeak in Shadow Drapion if it's running mediocre to bad IVs, because you outpace it and you survive its crunch, basically. That is the only benefit of a perfect Gyarados, whereas you're giving up by dropping that breakpoint on the Dragon Breath, which is what it comes down to. You're giving up Quillfish and Celio, which I think you're much more likely to see, and the mirror matchup, which I think is going to be everywhere. And then Shadow Gyarados, on the other hand, because of the extra damage, the better the ranking, the better it's performing, because that 20% bonus damage means the breakpoint's not mattering. So having like an ideal Gyarados lets you pick up regular Drapion, lets you pick up Malamar. It costs you the Quillfish matchup because of speed, but I feel like Drapion is probably a better target to have. In the 0 shield, the bulky Gyarados wins the mirror, but just barely. And also in the 0 shield, if you're running your rank 1 Gyarados, you pick up the win against Ariados. So yeah, the IVs don't play a lot. There's just 1 or 2 crucial matchups. Now, one thing to consider, though, with your Gyarados If people aren't going to lean on ghosts, which I don't think they're going to outside of Frostlass, you don't have to run Crunch. And if you don't run Crunch, you can pick up Outrage. Again, nothing resists Dragon, and Outrage has good damage. If you pick up Outrage over Crunch and you land the bait, you lose Venomoth. You don't have the quick damage to get there, but you can actually beat Jumpluff, Lapras, and Beware with Outrage. And all of those are, two of those are really good to pick up, and one of those is Jumpluff. Because again, I just don't see him showing up. But so Outrage, losing Venomoth to pick up Beware if you land your bait right, or if they just don't shield because they're like, what's he going to do, crunch me? Could actually be a really big game changer when considering your Gyarados. But Crunch also has that 50% debuff chance that's really hard to evaluate. If you're running Lucky one day, Crunch is just going to carry you to the win because a defense debuff followed by more Dragon Breaths is wonderful. But statistically, you're not going to be that lucky. So Outrage is worth considering. So that brings us to kind of the spiciest part of this cup, which is unconventional movesets. We talked about Outrage on Gyarados. I really do think it has viable play. What other unique, unconventional movesets can we pull out in this cup?
So one that you don't really see every day is Earthquake Snorlax. I mean, you used to. That was the move. But Earthquake Snorlax will flip the Drap and Muck. You won't have the superpower, so you're not going to get the Credilli, Linoone, Sudowoodo. But depending what you're looking to cover, if you're looking to cover those poisons and the dark poisons, Earthquake is going to be right there for you. So that's a solid one to take to the bank. And they're not going to see it coming.
Nope.
They're going to think, oh, I can tank that superpower. I can tank that Body Slam. No, it's an Earthquake. Bye-bye Muck. Your other option on Snorlax, and again, it's one that people are just not going to see coming unless you're a Master League, is the Outrage. And that will give you access to taking Pelipper out of the sky. And I do think you're going to see a lot of Pelipper.
Yeah, for sure.
So having Outrage could be that move that completely flips a game for you. And that could be the difference between a good ranked cup and a bad ranked cup.
Yeah. Interesting movesets because everyone just assumes it's superpower. So even if you link up to superpower against the normal, they'll probably shield it. And then, you don't get debuffed, and that can really throw off their expectations.
For sure.
And then finally, the last, I think, most key metamon with move variability is Lapras. We're used to seeing Surf Skull Bash because Skull Bash, if you can land it, is amazing. Definitely won me the Forged Cup today. Skull bashing on Lapras and then just beating him down with it because they couldn't fast move damage him anymore. But in this cup, you can consider running Ice Beam or Dragon Pulse instead of Skull Bash, which means if you've got a legacy moved Lapras, you don't have to get rid of Ice Beam or Dragon Pulse because they still have very good use. Picking those up means you lose the mirror because Skull Bash is what Lapras needs to beat other Lapras with Skull Bash. But either of the moves will pick up a win against Pelipper because Surf is resisted, Ice Beam is neutral, Dragon Pulse is neutral. Both of them hit heavy enough that they will blow Pelipper out of the sky. And in the Zero Shield, both of them will pick up Shiftry and Trevenant as well. Not Shadow Shiftry, but regular Shiftry. So there is very good play for not having Skull Bash when if you're considering Lapras as a closer. Shields down, having a heavy hitting closing move that's faster than Skull Bash is a good way to go, especially if you think they're going to lean into a ghost type to close out. They're like, aha, Skull Bash does nothing and I resist Surf, it's Trevenant. And then he gets Ice Beamed, they're going to cry and you're going to win. So Dragon Pulse and Ice Beam, they actually give you the same wins either way because they're just That's how similar. We just need a big damage move on Lapras, basically. So those are some spicy moves to consider on what I'm going to call, the top meta mons with move variability. Because yes, I think you're going to see Bewares everywhere, but you've got to run Stomp on Beware. You cannot run Drain Punch. It's a terrible move, especially in this meta. It does no damage, so they're not going to shield it. Whereas Stomp is stab, and it does nice, helpful damage. If you are picking Dragon Pulse or Ice Beam, I would say Ice Beam because it's 5 energy less. And there's just some chance in the meta that's going to be that 5 energy makes a difference. Because you're getting 10 energy from each ice shard, so it's unlikely it's ever going to come up, but just in case. You double Ice Beam, it is when that one rare moment when it adds up. But otherwise, if you're baiting Surf and then throwing, 55 versus 60 isn't going to make any difference. So that is the Architect Cup. It's going to require a little bit of planning and a lot of familiarity with your mons to try and catch moves, check your IVs and see what's going to make stuff. And then that, of course, leads us to the end of this episode and our questions for you all.
Yeah, so how do you feel about narrow metas like this? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Is it easy just to go through the 40 Pokemon and say, well, that's quick. That was an easy beginning, middle, and end of the story, so I'll just pick those ones and I'm done? Or are you really missing that kind of variety to say, well, I can pick anything? And yeah, let us know what you feel. And at least we have the shadows. At least we have the shadows to spice it up there.
And then, did we miss something? Did you find a way to make Shadow Claw, Shadow Typhlosion work by 2 shielding and then them not shielding the Solar Beam? Is it the trick no one sees coming? What are your MVPs in this cup? What are you leaning on? What are you finding is working well for you? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
And thank you very much for tuning in. You can get us on Twitter or Instagram at SilphThymePod or on Gmail, silphthyme@gmail.com.
Thanks, everyone, for stopping in. I hope your cups are going well for you. So we will catch you all next time, everybody.
Bye.